the patience, and again we're thinking about how do we become more patient? How do we strengthen those areas in which we're weak, or how do we maintain that strength in the areas where we feel that we're doing okay? We have to understand about patience that it is either physical patience or psychological, just kind of what we talked about with the definition. The psychological part is that when you're dealing with controlling yourself, controlling your anger, controlling yourself from panicking. You're trying to keep it all together and not fall apart. And the other is physical, dealing with your tongue and dealing with your limbs. And you can either do those by choice or without a choice. So he said physical patience by choice is such as doing hard labor willingly. You have something that you need to do, maybe work on some what they say, the honey-do list. You're supposed to fix things around the house, or you got to go, mow the lawn or do whatever. Something that you have to do physically, and you do it by choice. And it may be something difficult. This is the type of physical sabr, and you're choosing to do it. And then there is physical patience without choice, such as patiently bearing illness, beatings, or extremes of heat and cold. Right? Many of us are going through sicknesses that are going around the city. And you have to patiently bear it. There's nothing that you can do. You don't have a choice in that matter. It's happened to you, and now you have to be patient. Or with the weather. As we know, like last week, it was probably in the 70s, and now it's in the 40s, right? So the extremes of heat and cold, and you have to deal with them. It's really nothing that you can do. Psychological patience by choice, he says, such as refraining from things which both the Sharia and common sense say are wrong. Things that we know are wrong. Things that we know that just feel wrong to ourselves, and we know that they're wrong in Islam. Staying away from them by choice is psychological, right? We're choosing to do those things. Psychological patience without choice, such as patiently bearing an enforced separation from the one whom you love. Right? You may be distant someplace, and you can't, for some reason, you can't get back. Right? There was a time some years ago where there was a volcano erupted in Iceland, and it stopped traffic for many places all over the world, and the people were just stuck there. COVID had people stuck in certain places. Some people, they may be incarcerated. We know about our brothers and sisters in Palestine, and may Allah Ta'ala help them. But many of those people that have been released, they have been in prison for numbers of years, sometimes decades, right? And they have been separated from them. And their family knows that they have been arrested. And the worst thing about it, actually in that particular situation, that most of the people haven't even been charged. But that's a whole other situation. But this is a psychological patience without a choice. You have nothing to do with it, and again, all you can do is keep yourself from breaking down. So he said, patience by choice is of a higher status than patience without a choice, as the latter is common to all people, but the former is not attainable by all. You may not be able to have patience by choice, depending on your situation. It's better if you do, but not everyone is going to have that. Everyone goes through patience without a choice. But he said, again, the former, meaning patience by choice, is not always attainable by everyone. So he said, if a man's patience is stronger than his whims and desires, then he is like an angel. If we are able to defeat our whims and our desires, remember that battle that's constantly going on in our heart, if we're able to defeat the our whims and our desires, then we as human beings can be like an angel. He said he's like an angel. Right? And we know about the angels is that they worship Allah Ta'ala. They don't have a choice in the matter, but they do so, and they don't have a situation to where patience is necessary for them. So if we are able to do that, then we can reach these high heights to being like an angel. He said, but if his whims and desires are stronger than his patience, then he is like a devil. He's like a shaitan. In another part of the book, he says that it can even be to the point where the person makes shaitan his slave. That shaitan is following him. He's so evil that shaitan follows him. And this is the person, again, that lets their whims and their desires dictate whatever they do. They don't have any patience. It comes to their minds, it comes to their heart, and they just do it, right? And some of the people say that's like the psychological message of like Nike, right? Just do it. They want you to just obey, or like Sprite is obey your thirst, right? You want to obey every inclination. They call that hedonism, and this is something that we deal with a lot within the society. But he says, if a person's whims and desires are stronger than his patience, then he is like a devil. And he said, if his desire for food, drink, and intercourse is stronger than his patience, then he is no better than an animal. Right? Then he's no better than an animal. If we can't get beyond our base desires to eat and to drink, our basic desires to mate, he said, then we are no better than an animal, because an animal, they don't do anything by choice. Everything is by instinct. Everything is by what they're feeling at the time. Animals will do crazy things in public, and they don't care what anyone says, right? Who's ever seen a dog use the restroom on a fire hydrant or a tree, right? We've seen it. We've seen dogs do worse things in public, right? But imagine that a human being that does that, they're no different. They're no different than an animal if they cannot control their base desires. And he mentioned that Qatada radiallahu anhu, rahimahullah ta'ala, said, Allah created angels with reason and no desires, animals with desires and no reason, and man with both reason and desires. So again, if we are able to have patience over our desires, we are like angels. If our desires are stronger than our patience, we are like devils. And if we cannot control our need for these base desires, then we're no better than animals. So he says some people cannot have patience without struggling and facing many difficulties. And this is kind of the purpose of what we're dealing with, trying to obtain patience. Others are able to have patience easily. The first type is like a man who wrestles with a strong man and cannot beat him with utmost effort. The second type is like a man who wrestles with a weak man and beats him easily. Such is the war between the soldiers of Ar-Rahman and the soldiers of Shaitan. All right, so everyone think about, oh yeah, you gotta keep going. Think about your own self and your own struggles. Those things that you have patience on, those things that you are strong with, it's like you're fighting against a weak man, and you're beating that thing. All right, who's the big fighter these days? I know Khabib, but I know he's not doing it anymore, so I don't know them. Anyone know these fighters? Gervonta Davis. Is he strong? Does he win a lot?
Nah, he's a world champion.
He's the champ? Okay. All right, so for those of us who are weak in our patience, it's like you're going up against Javante Davis.
He's small, maybe not.
Okay, what's the other one? The Tyson Fury. He's still fighting?
Francis.
Francis?
Yeah, Francis.
Okay, you're going up against this big guy. How do you feel? How do you like your chances? Not good, right? And for some of us, that's the way when we are weak in these particular areas, it's like we're going up against that person that's going to wrestle you. And you can't beat him with all your effort. No matter what you try, Khabib, when he grabs you, you know it's over, right? You know when that bell rings and Mike Tyson is on the other end of it, even today, you know that if he catches you, it's a knockout. You might get paid, but you're getting a knockout, or he's knocking you out. And the second type is like a man who wrestles with a weak man and beats him easily. So those things that you're good at, you can beat them, you can tackle them. Right? Some of us, when we look at our kids, when our kids are very young and they're very weak, we know I will hem you up, I will tackle you, right? I'll take care of you. Then when the kids get older and we notice that growth spurt, and they start to get the muscles on them and things like that, and you realize, okay, it's a little tougher. We'll never say that. It'll never come out, but sometimes we have to prove that we still got it. But this is how we deal with our battle, right? Some of those things, you're fighting someone that you can't beat. And other things it's like you're fighting some little kid. You're taking candy from a baby, right? But it's up to us to think about the things that what we have our strengths and our weaknesses in, and we have to fight that battle. So he said, whoever defeats the soldiers of Shaitan can defeat Shaitan himself. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu narrated, a man wrestled with one of the jinn and beat him. Then asked, why are you so weak and small? Right? Imagine someone wrestling a jinn. He says, why are you so weak and small? The jinn said, well, actually, I'm very big and strong compared to the rest of the jinn. And someone asked Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, they said, who was that? Was that man Umar? Radiallahu anhu? And he replied, who else could it have been? Right? So Umar ibn Khattab wrestling with a jinn. A big, strong jinn, but he's like, you're a weakling, right? Why are you such a wimp? Why are you so small? You're a jinn. And he says, well, actually, I'm actually pretty big, But Imam Ibn Qayyim, he's telling us the point that if we have this patience, if we build up this strength, then we can even tackle these big enemies, and Allah Ta'ala will make them small for us. Ibn Abi Dunya, rahimahullah Ta'ala, narrated that some of the Salaf, from some of the Salaf, that one shaitan met another, and he asked him why he was so thin. The other shaitan replied, because I'm with a man who mentions the name of Allah when he eats, so I cannot eat with him. And he mentions the name of Allah when he drinks, so I cannot drink with him. When he enters his home, he mentions the name of Allah, so I stay outside. The first shaitan said, but I'm with a man who does not mention the name of Allah when he eats, so I eat with him. He does not mention the name of Allah when he drinks, so I drink with him. And he enters his home and he does not mention the name of Allah, so I enter with him. So when he talked about, last week we talked about the different names that patience is known by. And part of this is being steadfast in these adhkar. This is a type of patience that we do. If we don't say Bismillah when we're eating or drinking or entering our house, we've given shaitan a place to stay and a meal and a drink. How many times, and I don't want you necessarily to raise your hand, But how many times do we forget to do that? How many times have we forgotten and we've given Shaitan, our enemy, who Allah Ta'ala says, Aduwwum Mubin, that he is a clear enemy to us. How many times have we fed him? How many times have we given him a drink? How many times where he needed a place to stay for the night? We won't even give some relatives a place to stay for the night. Hey, stay in a hotel. No. But he's spending the night in our house, getting rested. So, as he mentioned in the story, that if this person is denying Shaitan these things, then this jinn, this Shaitan that's accompanying him, trying to get him to do evil, trying to get him to slip up, he's weak. He's emaciated. The other jinn are looking at him, why are you so skinny? You know, sometimes you see people and you say, yeah, you've lost some weight, and it's a good thing, right? Other times you see people have lost weight and you're like, hey, are you okay? You know, this is what this jinn is saying to him. Are you okay? Because he's skinny. But this other one, he's like, no, but I'm getting fed. So inshallah ta'ala, we want to make the jinn and the shayateen that follow us, we want to make them skinny and unhealthy so that they are weak against us. He says, some of the Sahaba said, a believer whips the shaitan like the way a person whips his camel when he's traveling, right? And this is due to that iman. So he said, whoever develops the habit of patience is feared by his enemies. And whoever finds patience difficult is in danger, as his enemy will readily dare to attack him and do him harm. And so this is one of the reasons why we need to focus on strengthening those weak parts of us. We have weak areas in us. And so, again, he says, whoever finds patience difficult is in danger. Shaitan is always looking for a way in. That thing that you yourself know, we don't need to share it with anyone. But if you think about those parts, where are your weakest points? Where can the enemy attack you? We need to think about those things and understand that we're in danger if we don't take care of those things. So once again, our struggle to obtain patience, it dignifies us. It makes us, if we try to obtain patience, it'll make us like the angels, right? Of course, we'll never be angels, but it can put us on such a high status, and it'll elevate us. All right, and so we're getting towards the end. So patience is required in the following areas of life: in worshiping Allah and following His commands, in abstaining from wrong actions, and in accepting Allah's decree and ruling, His qada wal qadr. All right, so 3 areas of life in which we need this patience. So he said, patience in worshiping Allah and carrying out His instructions means that you perform the prescribed acts of worship regularly and do so sincerely and with knowledge. So what are some of the prescribed things that we should do? Right? Some of the things that are wajib upon us. Salah. Yeah. What else? Fasting in Ramadan. What else? Paying zakah. Yeah, good job. Doing hajj if you're able to, physically and financially. Huh? Oh. Reading Quran, there is a wajib element to that, yes. Yes.
Dealing with the brother.
Huh?
Dealing with the brother.
Dealing with the brother. Sometimes you can't avoid that. Huh? Feeding a sick person. Now we're getting into the mustahab things. But speaking the truth is always something that you should do. All right. We got a lot. All right. But he says that you do them regularly, especially the salah, right? That we do the salah regularly, and we do so sincerely, and we do so with knowledge, right? And this is where knowledge comes into it, that we have to know what we're doing. He said, worship that is not performed regularly is of no value. And what he means by this is that it's not that you're never going to ever make some type of mistake or miss the salah on time or something like that. It's not that. But what it means that when you establish something, that is your main thing, right? You're praying all the time, and any type of mistake you make is something that is an exception to the general rule. Whereas the other way is that you don't pray, and if you pray, that's the exception, right? So he's saying, if you don't perform these things regularly, it's of no value. He said, even if worship is performed regularly, there are two dangers. So to protect our worship, we must make sure that we are sincere, right? We have to do the worship that we do sincerely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have to ensure that our worship is done in accordance to the sunnah, right? We have to look at our salah. We should be able to trace everything that we say and do in our salah back to some hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Everything that we do. So think about your salah. Is there anything where you're unclear, like where did I get that from? Right? So we should always try to make sure that it is in line with the sunnah. All right, next he said patience and abstaining from wrong action. He said this type of patience can be achieved through the fear of punishment which follows the wrong action, or through a feeling of haya or shyness or shame before Allah for using His blessings and committing wrong actions. So he said the way that we develop this type of patience is we either have fear of Allah, the punishment, like if I do this thing, Allah is going to punish me for it. Or we should have this sense of haya, this shame before Allah, like I don't want to do that because Allah has given me all this stuff and it would be wrong for me to commit this sin. He said the feeling of haya before Allah can be strengthened through learning more about Allah and knowing about His names and attributes. Haya is a characteristic of people who are noble and possess good qualities. So the person who refrains from wrong action because of haya is better than the one who abstains because of fear, because the shame indicates that a person is mindful of Allah and His might. So if you are shy to commit sins before Allah, if that's the reason why you're not sinning, is because you're ashamed, like, how can I do that? He fed me. How can I do that? He gave me clothing. How can I do that? He gave me life, gave me my children. He said that's better than a person who does it because he fears the hellfire. That's better. He said because the person whose deterrent is the fear of Allah has his thoughts focused on the punishment. He's not thinking about Allah. He said the fearful person's main concern is himself and how to save himself from the punishment, whereas the shy person, his main concern is Allah and His glory. Both have attained the status of Iman, right? Both are, they're both mu'minun, right? Whether you fear Allah or you're shy of disobeying Him, you both attain Iman. He said, but the shy person has attained ihsan, a higher status than Iman, in which he conducts himself as if he can see Allah, and so his heart is filled with shyness. He's bashful. He's embarrassed to do this sin in front of Allah because he knows that Allah Ta'ala is watching. And lastly, he said patience at the times of trial and adversity. And so he says patience during difficult times may be achieved. Again, we're trying to look at ways where we can boost our patience. He says thinking of the good reward that lies ahead. So if we think about, like, well, we're going through this trial, maybe you're going through an illness or something like that. You think of what is the good that Allah Ta'ala is going to give you after this. And you're expecting and hoping a time of ease, because Allah Ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا لَعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. You know that it's coming. Every difficulty there's an ease coming, and so I'm hoping for that ease to come. Also, he said, thinking of Allah's countless blessings. So maybe you lost your job, or maybe your car broke down. You think about the other things that Allah Ta'ala has given you, right? And then lastly, he says, thinking of the previous blessings of Allah, those things that He gave you in the past. And so these are the ways that we can obtain this type of patience. And so again, patience is needed in these three areas: obeying the commands, avoiding sins, and accepting the decree of Allah. And we develop them by maintaining sincere worship done upon the sunnah. We increase in our fear and our shyness, right? We listen to those ayat and those ahadith that deal with the punishment, and then also about the grandeur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that we feel ashamed to sin. And then lastly, considering Allah's blessings and rewards. And we're going to end here. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa jazakumullahu khairan.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Jazakumullah khairan, Sheikh, for this beautiful class and reminder for everyone. Now we are going to have a quiz. So there will be like 3 questions, 2 for brothers and 1 for sister side, inshallah. So yeah, let me start with the first one. So guys, please be attentive here. Okay. So the first one is person who is showing patience of choice more like an what? Let me repeat it again. Is it fine now? So let me repeat it again. It's person who is showing patience of choice more like an what? Okay, go ahead. Yes.
A person who shows patience without choice.
With choice.
Without.
Yeah. With choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like what? So in the beginning of the lecture, like Sheikh mentioned something. So that person is more like in what?
He's better than the person who has patience without choice.
It's close, yeah, but there's like a word which he used. If you remember, no problem. Okay, go ahead. Angel? Yes, angel. So it's more like an angel, what he mentioned. Jazakumullah khair. Just give him some candies, inshallah. Okay. Allah Mubarak, yeah. Let me go ahead with the second one, again for the brother side. When one desires overpower their ability to be patient, they resemble what? Yes, go ahead. Okay, the question is, when one desires overpower their ability to be patient, they resemble what?
They resemble being like patient.
No.
I mean, I don't know.
Okay, go ahead.
I think it's greediness.
There's a word. Okay, go ahead. Brother.
Shaitan.
Yes, there it. Allah Mubarak. That was pretty loud.
You got already, right?
Okay. Cool. Jazakumullah khairan. There's like one more question from sister side.
I know, I got it.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, let me conclude the final one. So, what type of patience is regarded as superior and less commonly found among people? So, what type of patience it was for the sister side? Yeah. Let me repeat it again. So, what type of patience is regarded as superior and less commonly found among people? So there were like 2 types, if I remember. So yeah.
Anybody? Did they answer?
Oh, I don't know the question.
Which kind of patience is more superior?
The patience that one does for the glory of Allah and not for the punishment?
Yes, I think the first part was correct. It was like patience. Patience of choice was the correct answer. So it was like pretty close. Allah Mubarak. So yeah, Jazakumullah khairan everyone. Now we're going to have a small, just bring it, yeah. So we're going to have a talk from Brother Abdul Rahman. He's going to talk about a Sahabi, Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So yeah, Abdul Rahman.
Microphone too?
Wait, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So inshallah, today inshallah I wanted to give you, I'm going to give you a short speech about Umar radiallahu anhu, a great Sahaba. Umar radiallahu anhu was one of the great pillars of the great pillars of the strength of Islam during the early times of Mecca. In Mecca, so before his conversion to Islam, his goal was first to kill the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what happened was, as he was going to kill the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because the Quraysh leaders had offered him around 1,000 dirhams. So when Umar radiallahu anhu heard this, he was shocked. He was shocked that him getting offered 1,000 dirhams for just a person to be killed. So Umar radiallahu anhu made it his goal to go to kill the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So as he was on his way, as Sahaba stopped him from going to buy some time. He said, "Why don't you go first deal with the family, your own family who had become Muslim, which was Umar radiallahu anhu's brother-in-law and his own sister." So Umar radiallahu anhu rushed back and he was so shocked. So he went all the way back to his house, and he knocked on the doorstep. He knocked on the door, and as he was at the doorstep, he heard verses of the Quran getting recited. He was so furious that he knocked on the door, and he opened the door. And as he was inside, his sister started saying, and his brother-in-law first came and said that I had become Muslim. So as this was happening, Umar radiallahu anhu started beating up the brother-in-law, and the sister came to protect his own Umar radiallahu anhu's brother-in-law and said, "I became Muslim." Umar radiallahu anhu was so furious that he hit his own sister, and she started bleeding. In this guilt, he was guilty for what he did. So at the least, he wanted to read what they were actually reading, like what the verses were about. So as his sister told him to go first take a bath, do ghusl, before reading the Quran, and as he read the verses, he read Surah Taha, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, and he read the first few verses of Surah Taha. He was actually shocked at the fact that they were so beautiful. So he made his way back to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this changed from his intention to go kill the Prophet, to accepting Islam. And as he was on his way, he went and accepted Islam. This was actually one of the great achievements it was a very great achievement, because Umar radiallahu anhu was like a really powerful Quraysh leader at that time. He was so wealthy and was a lot famous around Quraysh. So he went back, and after he became Muslim, there are like many hadiths narrated about him. One of the hadiths were Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam narrated that the shaitan used to take a different path. The shaitan used to take a different path away from Umar radiallahu anhu, because how of a fierce man he was, of how strong iman and belief. So this was one of the characteristics of Umar radiallahu anhu. As soon as Umar radiallahu anhu became Muslim, he wasn't afraid of the Quraysh at all. He went to every doorstep of every leader of Quraysh and knocked on their door and straight up told them I had become Muslim. They couldn't lay a finger against him. They couldn't do anything. He was so tall and he was so muscular that it was narrated that when you see Umar radiallahu anhu, it would look like he was on an animal, like a camel or a horse, and that's how it was narrated. Abu Jahl was one of the strong leaders and wealthiest leaders in Quraysh, and as soon as he heard the news, as Umar radiallahu anhu was on the doorstep of the Abu Jahl's doorstep, Abu Jahl just slammed the door, and that's all he could do. He couldn't do anything about it. He had to just accept the fact that one of the strongest Quraysh leaders had become Muslim. This was actually one of the leading causes to the Battle of Badr, and this got serious to the people who did idol worshipping. And so there's so much to learn about Umar radiallahu anhu in hadiths and everything narrated about him. There are like a lot of tafsir about him when you read in tafsir. There's so much to learn, and his characteristics on his iman, leadership, intelligence. So I recommend you all to go read about Umar radiallahu anhu. There are many khutbahs about him or tafsir and hadith narrated about him. And this was just a simplified version. There's so much more, everything in key details. So I just recommend you all to do that. Jazakallah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Go from
Allah Mubarak, that was really beautiful. Jazakumullah khairan, everyone. Now we are going to have food. You guys can just, have it. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.